Protecting your energy is not a luxury. It's a duty. There comes a moment in life when you realize your energy is your most valuable currency. Not money, not time, but that quiet inner reservoir that fuels your decisions, your focus, your ability to stay calm when the world spins in chaos. Once this becomes clear, everything changes. You stop trying to please everyone. You stop explaining yourself to people who never truly listen. You stop giving away your mental space just to avoid conflict. Instead, you begin guarding your inner world like a sacred temple. Not because you're cold or distant, but because you finally understand how precious your peace truly is. The Stoics understood this long before modern psychology caught up. They taught that true power lies in mastering yourself, staying grounded when others panic, protecting the fire inside you from being blown out by noise, drama, or insult. This philosophy is not about cutting people off in anger. It's about choosing serenity with wisdom. It's about becoming the kind of person who walks into a room and commands respect through stillness, not volume. Protecting your energy isn't optional. In today's loud and draining world, it might be the only way to stay sane. Guard your peace like sacred ground. Inner peace is sacred. It's not something to give away freely. The quiet you feel when your mind is still, your breath steady, and your heart undisturbed, that's power. And in a world addicted to noise, it's rare. Many of us were raised to believe that being kind means being available, listening to everyone, and allowing others to unload their problems on us, even at our own expense. But that's not Stoicism. That's self-neglect disguised as virtue. The Stoics taught that peace isn't passive, it's the reward of inner discipline and clear boundaries. You don't need to yell to protect your peace. You simply need to stop giving it to people who treat it like it's disposable. Imagine your peace as a garden. If you let everyone walk through it, it withers. The more time you spend cleaning up after emotional intrusions, the less time you have to grow what truly matters: your focus, your purpose, your self-respect. Often it's not the loud or dramatic people who do the most harm, it's the subtle ones. The ones who disguise manipulation as connection. The ones who want your time but not your value. And here's the Stoic truth: just because someone wants access to you doesn't mean they're entitled to it. Peace doesn't come from being liked. It comes from living in alignment with your values, your priorities, and your boundaries. If someone disturbs that alignment, you have every right to step away. You don't need to explain. You don't need to justify. In fact, the quieter your exit, the more powerful your message. You can still love people from a distance. You can be kind without being constantly available, generous without being drained. Like time and money, your energy is a limited resource. If you're not intentional about who enters your inner world, you're surrendering control of it. Start treating your inner life as sacred. Know what centers you and know what throws you off. Most importantly, recognize who you become when you ignore your boundaries, tired, resentful, scattered. That version of you isn't your best self, it's a warning sign. So next time someone brings drama, chaos, or guilt to your doorstep, ask yourself, would I let this energy into my home? If the answer is no, then don't let it into your mind. Not every emotional battle needs your attention. Many people believe that every insult or challenge requires a response, that if someone disrespects or gossips about you, you must prove yourself. But not every emotional invitation deserves a response. Some people thrive on conflict. They don't want understanding, they want your attention. The moment you react, they've succeeded. Epictetus warned, if someone succeeds in provoking, you realize your mind is complicit in the provocation. Your reaction is your choice. You don't get dragged into emotional chaos by accident. You walk in, even if unconsciously. But once you become aware, you can step back. You can witness someone's meltdown without absorbing it. You can choose stillness over reaction. Every day, you'll meet people who bait you through arrogance, guilt, or passive aggression. If you aren't careful, you'll waste energy defending yourself to those who never wanted to understand you in the first place. But the Stoic approach is clear. Protect your energy. Don't meet force with force. Let others be loud. You remain still. Because sometimes the strongest move is silence, and the most powerful response is no response at all. Protect your energy with wisdom, not emotion. There's a quiet trap we often fall into, defending ourselves to people who never intended to understand us. We explain, justify, and bend over backward, trying to prove our worth. And in doing so, we lose something priceless: Our time, our energy, our focus, and worst of all, our inner calm. But what if you didn't play that game? What if instead of reacting, you paused? What if you used emotional discipline, letting force pass through you instead of meeting it head on? Think of an argument as a punch. Most people punch back. But a Stoic steps aside. They don't engage unless there's purpose. And ego is not a purpose. Proving yourself to someone who refuses to see your value isn't noble, it's exhausting. There is immense strength in staying still when case is expected. Imagine how disarming it is to someone trying to provoke you when instead of reacting, you offer silence. They lose control because their strategy relied on stealing your peace. Silence doesn't mean you're weak, it means you're wise. The strongest people don't yell the loudest. They know when walking away says more than staying to fight. So next time your heart races, your voice rises, and you feel the pull to defend, ask yourself, is this worth my peace? Not your pride, not your ego, your peace. Because no one refunds you for the hours you spend arguing with someone committed to misunderstanding you, but you'll feel the cost in your sleep, your clarity, and your creativity. Sometimes the most powerful move is no move at all. Say no without guilt or explanation. There's a quiet power in saying no without guilt, without explanation, and without a lengthy justification. But for many of us, that's difficult. We've been conditioned to think our value lies in being agreeable, always available, and constantly accommodating, even when it costs us our own well-being. But here's the Stoic truth. Every time you say yes to something that drains you, you say no to something that could fulfill you. People-pleasing is a socially accepted form of compulsion. It's fear in disguise, fear of being disliked, of disappointing others, of conflict. So we say yes to obligations we dread. We take calls we're not ready for. We loan energy we don't have. And we wonder why we feel burned out and invisible. Every yes made from guilt chips away at your integrity. Over time, you forget where your will ends and others' expectations begin. That's why learning to say no is a form of self-respect. It draws invisible boundaries that protect your emotional space. You don't owe anyone an essay. No, I won't be able to. That's enough. No, I need time for myself. Still enough. When someone pushes for a reason, it's not because they don't understand, it's because they don't accept it. And if someone can't respect your no, they don't deserve your yes. Virtue isn't just in what you give, it's in what you protect. Your time, your attention, and your energy are not unlimited. If you wouldn't hand someone your last $20 without thinking, why hand them your peace? Not everyone will like your no. Some may call you selfish, cold, or distant. Let them. What they're really saying is they preferred it when they could take from you freely. But you are not here to be consumed, or even you are here to live in alignment with your own rhythm and values. Over time, you'll grow stronger in your silence. You'll see that saying no isn't rejection, it's redirection. It's choosing clarity over confusion. And most of all, it's choosing you. Detached from other people's emotional weather, there's something deeply exhausting about walking on emotional eggshells. Every word you say is carefully measured. Every move is adjusted. Every silence is misinterpreted. It's like living in someone else's storm. Without realizing it, you shrink yourself to avoid triggering someone else's mood. You become more focused on avoiding conflict than expressing your truth. But the Stoics would remind you their chaos is not your responsibility. Their mood is not your mission. Their emotional suffering is not yours to carry. Compassion is noble, but not when it turns into emotional entanglement. Stoicism doesn't tell us to stop feeling. It tells us to feel with boundaries. You can care without carrying. You can be present without being pulled in. You can witness someone's emotional storm without inviting it into your home. Detachment isn't coldness. It's wise separation. And it begins when you stop making someone else's emotional state the center of your own life. Detach, protect, and reclaim your peace. Some people live in a constant cycle of complaining, blaming, criticizing, and self-destructing, and expect you to validate it all. They confuse empathy with enmeshment. They want you to climb into the emotional hole with them, not realizing that real support comes from staying grounded and lifting others up, not falling with them. When you refuse to join their emotional spiral, they might label you as insensitive, distant, or even cruel. But their perception is not your truth. You are not cruel for choosing peace. You are not distant for staying calm. You are simply awake. Detachment is the art of staying rooted in yourself while others drift. It's saying, I see you, I hear you, but I don't have to carry this for you. It's the realization that your emotional state should never depend on someone else's instability. When you're constantly adjusting yourself to regulate another person's mood, you slowly lose your center. Over time, you forget what calm even feels like. That's not Stoic strength, it's spiritual surrender. So how do you detach in a healthy, practical way? Start by recognizing the signs. Do you feel drained after every interaction with them? Do you feel responsible for their happiness? Do you feel guilty when you put yourself first? These aren't signs of failure. They're signs you've been over-functioning. Once you're aware, draw the line quietly. You don't need to announce your boundary or argue about it. Just begin to show up differently. When they complain, don't dive in. When they guilt trip, don't explain. When they sulk, don't chase. Stay still. Let their emotions pass like clouds across your sky, noticed but not absorbed. This kind of detachment isn't easy, especially if you've spent years being the fixer, the emotional sponge, the peacemaker. But you have to ask yourself, what has that role cost you? How many times have you burned out trying to make someone else feel whole? The truth is, no amount of overgiving will heal someone who is committed to their own misery. No level of emotional sacrifice will bring peace to someone who refuses to find it within themselves. So instead of overextending, practice presence with limits. Instead of reacting, observe. Instead of rescuing, release. And when guilt creeps in, remind yourself, I can care without caring. I can love without losing myself. Their mood is their weather. Mine is mine. I choose to stay in the calm, not because I don't care, but because I've learned that peace isn't a luxury. It's a baseline. It's a responsibility. Recognize energy vampires and walk away quietly. Not all harm arrives loudly. Some of it slips in through politeness. It shows up in a friend who always has a problem but never asks about yours. In a coworker who vents daily but leaves the air heavy with stress. In a family member whose voice is soft, but whose passive aggression hums through your nervous system. These are energy vampires, not in a mythical sense, but in a psychological one, people whose presence drains you more than it nourishes you. They may not mean to harm you, but impact outweighs intent. Maybe they need constant attention. Maybe they've never learned emotional regulation. Maybe drama is their identity. Regardless of why the result is the same, you leave those interactions feeling heavier. You find yourself replaying their words, doubting your decisions, or carrying stress that wasn't yours to begin with. That's the signal. That's when you know they didn't come to connect. They came to unload. The Stoics taught us to observe the effect people have on our inner world. They urged us to protect the inner citadel, to defend the mind, not just from overt harm, but from subtle, corrosive influence. That's why quiet departure becomes an act of wisdom. You don't need to argue, explain, or seek closure. Just begin to withdraw. Less engagement, fewer responses, more time for yourself. They may say you have changed, that you're distant, that you're not who you used to be, and they'll be right. You've finally realized that your energy is a finite resource, not a communal supply. Yes, there will be guilt. A voice in your head will whisper that you owe them an explanation, a final goodbye, another chance. But that voice is guilt in disguise, and guilt makes a poor compass for growth. You don't owe continued access to someone who refuses to grow. You don't owe your light to someone who chooses darkness, and you certainly don't owe yourself another round of emotional exhaustion just to be polite. Epictetus said, "It is not things that disturb us, but our opinions about them." If you believe you must always be available, you will suffer. But if you shift that belief, if you begin to see your peace as something worth preserving, you reclaim your power. Some exits are not betrayals, they're blessings. Silence is not cruelty, it's healing. Walking away from toxic dynamics isn't abandonment, it's self-respect. So how do you walk away? Stop feeding the loop. Don't argue, don't fix, don't explain, just step back, engage less, respond less. Let the distance settle in, not out of anger, but out of peace. Eventually they'll find someone else to drain, and you'll feel lighter, clearer, more rooted in who you truly are. And when that clarity comes, protect it, guard it, let it grow, because peace doesn't always come with applause. Often it arrives quietly after you stop responding. Guard your inputs and let go of the need to convince. The Stoics practiced attention as a form of discipline. They understood that your thoughts shape your emotions, and your emotions shape your actions. In today's world, overwhelmed with stimulation, our minds have become sponges, absorbing everything from fear-driven headlines to comparison-filled social feeds to outrage-centered content disguised as truth. The result? Many people become reactive not because their lives are chaotic, but because their inputs are. In other words, protecting your energy today starts not just with who you avoid, but with what you consume. Ask yourself honestly, what are you feeding your mind? Who are you allowing to speak into your thoughts through podcasts, TV shows, music news, or even background noise? Everything you consume leaves a residue. Some things inspire you, some remind you of your goals, but others breed resentment, anxiety, or self-doubt. Let's be honest, doom scrolling isn't just a bad habit. It's a slow erosion of your clarity, your focus, and your peace. The more you consume without discernment, the more cluttered your mind becomes. And a cluttered mind can't create. It can't rest. It can't respond wisely. It reacts. It imitates. It craves dopamine instead of direction. And when that happens, your energy isn't being stolen by others, it's leaking through your own choices. So what can you do? You become a gatekeeper. You begin treating your mind like a home, not a hallway. You choose what enters. You build habits around intentional input. Read books that teach instead of distract. Have conversations that uplift instead of drain. Spend time in environments that restore instead of deplete. Take moments for silence. Let your brain reset. Turn off background noise that pretends to be helpful, but quietly hijacks your emotional state. Think of your energy like a garden. You wouldn't dump garbage into fertile soil and expect something beautiful to grow. Yet we do that to our minds all the time. We allow gossip, negativity, and triviality to plant themselves in our thoughts, then wonder why we feel scattered and uninspired. Once you understand that what you consume shapes who you become, you'll begin filtering your inputs. Protecting your peace is not just about avoiding toxic people. It's also about avoiding toxic patterns, mental habits, media consumption, and emotional clutter. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to cut out all entertainment news or idle moments. But you do need to be aware. Every scroll is a choice. Every video is a message. Every sound, word, and image is a suggestion to your subconscious, and you decide what takes root. Here's your challenge. Review your inputs, not just who you spend time with, but what you absorb. Declutter your digital life. Be ruthless with what you mute, unfollow, or simply stop engaging with. Build a mental diet that strengthens your clarity, not just to feel good, but to think clearly. Because protecting your energy means guarding every door, including the ones you open with a screen. Release the need to correct or convince. There's a unique kind of exhaustion that doesn't come from physical effort, but from emotional resistance. The urge to explain yourself, to change someone's mind, to fix their perspective so they finally get it. You've likely felt it, that mental drain after a debate that went nowhere. The frustration of trying to help someone who doesn't want to be helped. The heaviness of watching logic bounce off someone who only hears what supports their bias. But here's the truth the Stoics knew well. Not every mind is ready, not every argument deserves your voice, and not every person is open to truth no matter how clearly you present it. We live in a time where opinions are armor and beliefs are identity. Challenge someone's perspective and they don't hear truth, they hear threat. And what do? We double down. We explain more, talk louder, and hope that if we just say it the right way, they'll understand. But most resistance isn't about comprehension. It's about unwillingness. And the more you try to convince someone who has already decided not to hear you, the more you drain your spirit. You leave with less peace, not more. Their negativity remains untouched while your clarity lies in pieces. That's not strength. That's surrender, giving your energy to resistance instead of using it to grow. So how do you reclaim your energy? By shifting the question. Instead of asking, how do I make them see? Ask, is it worth trying? Instead of assuming change is possible, ask if it's your role. And if the answer is no, walk away. Not from anger, from wisdom. Let their worldview stand. Let their opinion echo. Let them believe they've won. Because you weren't in it to win. You were in it to help. And once you realize they don't want help, you move on. Detaching from the need to convince is one of the most freeing decisions you can make. It teaches you to speak only when it matters. It helps you reserve energy for those who are open, receptive, and ready. You begin to understand that silence is not weakness, it's discernment. You don't have to correct every false statement. You don't have to educate every ignorant voice. You can simply choose not to respond, and walking away does not mean you've lost. It means you've chosen peace over pride, wisdom over ego, stillness over struggle. The more you live this way, the more personal power you reclaim. Not power over others, but power over yourself. You stop wasting time trying to shape what won't change and start shaping your own life with precision, clarity, and intention. So the next time you're tempted to argue, to defend, or to prove a point, pause. Breathe, ask, does this lead to growth or just more resistance? If it's the latter, release it. Let it go. Not everything needs to be said. Not every truth must be pushed. And not every battle deserves your presence. Peace isn't found in convincing others. It's found in knowing you don't need to. The quiet power of silence and emotional self-regulation. In today's world, speaking quickly, defending yourself instantly, and proving your point loudly are often seen as strengths. But there is another kind of strength, quieter, deeper, and more powerful. It's the strength that doesn't argue, doesn't rush to correct, and doesn't get pulled into ego battles. It's the strength found in silence. Silence is often misunderstood. Many see it as weakness, surrender, or avoidance. But the Stoics knew better. To them, silence wasn't the absence of a response, it was a conscious presence. A deliberate choice to preserve energy, protect clarity, and shield the self from unnecessary noise. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Sometimes the most powerful reaction is no reaction at all. Think about it. When someone insults you, what do they really want? Your attention, your energy, your reaction. And the moment you give it, they win. Not because they were right, but because they pulled you out of your calm and into their chaos. But when you remain truly silent, not passive-aggressively, but intentionally, you deny them what they crave, most control over your mind. Silence becomes a boundary. It says, "I value my peace more than proving anything to you." It doesn't mean you're avoiding the truth. It means you're choosing not to engage in unnecessary friction. Often, silence says more than words ever could. It communicates that you are not easily shaken, that you know your worth, that your peace is not up for negotiation. Let's be clear, silence doesn't mean suppressing your voice. It means knowing when expression brings clarity and when it only adds to the noise. It's the difference between speaking from wisdom and reacting from pain. It's the ability to sit in discomfort without rushing to fix or explain, and that takes maturity. Picture yourself in a heated conversation. Someone raises their voice, distorts your words, and twists your intentions. The old version of you might have fought back, explained, defended, even shouted. But the grounded version of you, the Stoic version, pauses, breathes, and says nothing. Not out of spite, but out of protection. You preserve your energy. You protect the stillness you've worked hard to build. Yes, some people will misinterpret your silence. They may call you cold, uncaring, or detached. Let them. That's their projection, not your truth. What they call cold, the wise call composed. What they see as indifference, the wise recognize as discernment. What they dismiss as silence, the wise understand as power. Every unnecessary argument you walk away from, every insult you ignore, every time you resist the urge to defend your ego, that's a win. Not over the other person, but over yourself. It's a win over the reactive part of you that once needed validation. And in its place, you create stillness, presence, and personal power. So in your next conflict, don't rush to speak. Don't be the first to defend. Let your silence speak for you. Let it hold the space. Let it reflect your self-control. When you master the art of not reacting, you begin to see how much energy is wasted on words that don't need to be said. And you realize the most powerful response is often none at all. Not from fear, but from freedom. Keep your emotional thermostat internal. Now imagine walking into a tense room. Voices are sharp, shoulders are tight, emotions are high. Within minutes, you feel your chest tighten, your breath shorten. You absorb the room's mood without meaning to. That's what happens when your emotional thermostat is set externally when your inner state is dictated by the environment around you. But Stoicism teaches the opposite. It tells us to stop letting the weather outside control the climate within, to become the kind of person who stays warm in a cold room, calm in a storm, centered in chaos. When you allow someone else's anger to make you angry, you give them power. When their anxiety spreads to you, you hand them control. When someone's negativity drains you, it's because you left the door open. Emotional contagion is subtle. It seeps in through body language, tone, and expression. It doesn't need arguments to gain access. It needs only your unconscious agreement. The Stoics believe that virtue and peace are internal. You don't borrow calm from the world. You cultivate it. You build it through awareness, discipline, and deliberate choice. That means when someone yells, you lower your voice. When someone panics, you remain steady. You remind yourself, this is their storm, not mine. I do not enter unless I choose to. Think of your emotional state like a thermostat. If you're set to 72 degrees and someone enters with cold air, the system doesn't panic. It maintains the warmth. That's how you must be. Let others bring urgency or chaos. You don't have to match them. You regulate, not react. You protect your baseline not from stubbornness, but from self-respect. This isn't about being numb, it's about being steady. It doesn't mean avoiding people. It means not letting their emotions dictate yours. You can empathize without absorbing. You can care without carrying burdens that aren't yours. The real challenge is catching yourself in the moment. When someone pushes your buttons, ask, is this my feeling or is it theirs? When tension rises, ask, do I need to tense up or can I stay grounded? These aren't small questions, they're powerful choices. Some people won't understand. They'll say, why aren't you more upset or don't you care? The answer is simple, of course you care. You just don't need to collapse to prove it. You've learned that emotional maturity isn't about reacting. It's about responding with calm, with clarity, and most of all with intention. Sacred energy, sovereign peace, building a life rooted in clarity, responding from presence, not pressure, is one of the most powerful things you can do. The next time you feel your inner state shifting because of someone else's emotional turbulence, pause, breathe, reset your internal thermostat. Remind yourself, I decide how I feel. I decide how I show up. I am not a mirror, I am a center. That is the essence of Stoicism. It is not detachment from the world, but sovereignty within it. It is not apathy, but stability. It is not about controlling others, but mastering yourself. Create sacred routines that refill you. You cannot protect energy that you don't replenish. This is the quiet truth most people overlook. We learn to set boundaries, to say no, to avoid toxic situations. But restoration, the other half of the equation, is often forgotten. Life will still drain you. Responsibilities, emotions, and background stress constantly take their toll. Without practices that restore your inner world, you're not protecting your peace. You're slowly running on empty. The Stoics weren't just thinkers, they were builders of habit. Marcus Aurelius wrote every morning not because he had extra time, but because he needed alignment. Seneca made time for solitude not out of dislike for people, but out of devotion to inner clarity. These rituals were not luxuries, they were tools for survival, acts of preservation. What do sacred routines look like today? They don't need to be elaborate or aesthetic. They need to be yours. Maybe it's 10 minutes of quiet before the world wakes. Maybe it's a walk outside without a phone. Maybe it's journaling to clear your thoughts, or drinking your coffee is silence, no headlines, no scrolling, just presence. These are not indulgences. They are anchors. The point is not what you do, but how you do it intentionally. You carve out space that exists not to serve others, but to nourish yourself. Because if your day begins in chaos, your mind will follow. If your moments are filled with distraction, your thoughts will be scattered. But when you begin and end each day with rituals, you build emotional muscle. You reclaim control. Most people only realize the power of routine when burnout strikes, when the mind becomes noisy and unfocused. But you don't have to wait for depletion. You can start replenishing now, especially when you're around others constantly, family, coworkers, even people you love. Rituals are your quiet way of saying, I am here for myself too. That's not selfish. That's wise. You can't pour from an empty cup, and you can't protect peace if you never take time to restore it. So reflect on this. When do you feel most grounded, most alive? That is your ritual. Guard it, schedule it, build your day around it, not the other way around. Because the more sacred your routines, the less vulnerable you become to emotional chaos. The stronger your habits, the quieter your mind. The more rooted your day, the less shaken your spirit. Your energy is not just something to defend, it's something to rebuild. Every act of intentional rest, stillness, or reflection is not wasted time. It's spiritual maintenance. It's how you stay sharp, stay kind, and stay unshakable. Walk away when peace becomes impossible. There comes a moment, quiet and sobering, when you realize peace is no longer possible in a relationship, environment, or situation. No matter how kind your tone, how patient your effort, or how many boundaries you have set, peace can't be created alone. It requires mutual respect. And when that is missing, walking away is no longer just an option. It becomes necessary. This kind of walk is the hardest, the one that leads you back to yourself. The one where you say, not with resentment, but with clarity, this is no longer where I grow. This is where I shrink, and I won't shrink for anyone. The Stoics didn't glorify suffering. They preached discernment. Seneca once said, "A wise man is content with himself, but not so much that he is willing to live among the wicked." Your virtue isn't defined by how much you can tolerate, but by how wisely you choose what to tolerate. We often hold on because of time-invested fear of starting over or guilt about leaving. But peace is not something you earn through suffering. It is not noble to stay where you are being slowly diminished. You are not meant to endure disrespect to prove your loyalty. You are not meant to stay in someone else's storm to show you care. The most powerful love is the kind that includes yourself. Walking away is not giving up. It's giving yourself permission to grow elsewhere. Some relationships are chapters, some jobs are bridges, and some environments are teachers. Not everything is meant to be permanent. When peace becomes impossible, leaving is not failure. It is wisdom. You don't need a grand explanation. You don't need to justify it 10 times. You don't need to wait until you're falling apart. The exit can be quiet, firm, and final, a decision made once and honored daily. Walking away is not about who you leave behind. It's about who you walk toward, the version of you that is free, untangled, and centered. The one who wakes up to calm, not tension. Yes, it may be lonely at first. You may feel doubt, regret, even grief. But then something else appears, clarity, relief, and a deeper strength you didn't know you had. You'll look back and realize that leaving was not the end. It was the beginning of your return. The moment you stopped begging for peace from people or places incapable of giving it and started building it on your own terms. So if your presence feels like a compromise, if your soul whispers, "This is not it," listen. Don't wait for permission. Don't wait for it to get worse. The longer you stay, the more of yourself you lose. Your peace is not worth sacrificing for closeness. Because protecting your energy is not about pushing others away. It's about returning fully to yourself with grace, with clarity, and without guilt. Final reflection. When you finally choose to protect your energy, you learn that not everyone is meant to walk with you. Not every battle deserves your attention. Not every emotion that enters your space belongs to you. Peace is not a prize handed out at the end of suffering. It is something you build moment by moment through silence, through boundaries, through the courage to say no and walk away. The Stoics didn't preach perfection. They practiced presence. They didn't aim to avoid life's storms. They focused on not being shaken by what didn't matter. In a noisy world, they remind us, your power lies in what you refuse to absorb, the anger you don't reflect, the invitation to chaos you decline, the battles you let pass untouched. That is strength, quiet, steady, unshakable. So ask yourself now, what am I still giving energy to that no longer deserves it? Who am I still trying to fix or impress at the cost of my peace? Most importantly, what would my life feel like if I truly treated my energy as sacred? You already know the answers. The work is in choosing them daily, not just when it's easy, but especially when it's not. That's where discipline becomes freedom. That's where your untouchable power begins.